artist residency at the building. So I've been doing this for about 3 years. It brings together like an open call for emerging artists in Chicago, and they have an opportunity to show their work in the building and create connections with all the different creative independent businesses in the building. And I've had such a great time working with these 3 artists, photographers, Ashley Chappell, Andrea Coleman, and Clay Mills. And then today we have Ayrika who's a Chicago curator, art historian, artist, all the things, getting your PhD. She's really cool. She also is affiliated with Black Puffin, which is a curatorial group with Moju Yassine. On the first floor, he has his art studio here. So we're just excited to be here and just gonna kind of have an open dialogue about their practice, and we'll open it up for questions, I think, towards the end, but it's gonna kind of form naturally. Also, this is, for context, this is Clayton Huack's space. He's a local photographer. He runs events. Let's Clayton. Yeah. And we're really grateful to have this space. It was set up perfectly because after this there's a play going on. So they just with what's his name?
Mark Kelly Smith.
Mark Kelly Smith, who I guess is like the father of slam poetry. I don't know if I'm sure there's like open seats, but if you feel like sticking around, it starts at like 7:30. But yeah, this is like a set for that, so if anyone's curious. But yeah, thank you for coming. And I guess a little note on the table of prints. This is like a loose art archive, like print archive for all the artists that we've worked with in the past. So we're starting like an online shop where people can buy affordable art prints with local artists. So let me know if you have any questions about that. And then these sheets have some information about the future exhibitions. And yeah, I'm gonna stop yapping. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, hello everyone. I'm really excited to be here with this group of artists. A little bit about me. I'm an art historian and a curator, and I focus a lot on contemporary art, but what I like to call the hyper-contemporary. So I'm really interested in seeing what my peers are doing and treating that with the same kind of importance and weight as we do kind of old art historians as well. So I'm really excited to learn about you guys' work. We'll start with a bit of introductions, but from my research, my brief research on looking into your practices, it seems like you 3 are coming from very different types of approaches to photography. And I really resonated with a quote by the photographer Elliot Erwitt, and he says that photography is an art of observation. It has little to do with the things that you see and everything to do with the way that you see them. And I feel like the 3 of you approach your subjects in very different ways. So I'm really excited to hear about that. So we'll start with I'll give you a chance to just briefly describe your work. Maybe a quick little introduction to how you would define your practice. Clay, would you like to start?
Sure. I come from filmmaking, and photography was something I ended up picking up along the way, but I think a lot of it at this point is just mostly interested in trying to find what's like actually new, what's like aesthetically new in the world, and just seeking that out. Yeah, I don't know, just looking for just things that basically everyone doesn't allow themselves to photograph because they're like ugly, but what's actually kind of like radical about the present. I think that's pretty much it.
I guess you said start with our background a little bit too?
Yeah, a little bit of background about who you are and how you would kind of generally describe your practice.
Yes. So yet again, Andrea Coleman. I come from Chicago Heights. My work is really based off like my upbringing. I start by, or kind of how my process started was this journey into everyone goes back home and has a photo album they go through, whether it's the people that they know or don't know. And I've always been fascinated by some of the photos that I would see and how I would resonate with them, even if I didn't know them personally or they had passed in past life. So I started collecting these photos, and so I started scanning them, and then based off the oral histories that I was told from the perspective of my uncle, from the perspective of my auntie, of my cousin, like it was always a different perspective, and it was very much so like this idea of recreating the past and bringing them back to the future, so kind of touching on the Sankofa actual aspect of things and really bringing them back to life and making them as this living deity, because that's how I kind of seen them, or my ancestors as I was raised, and they kind of me. But how I started the journey was trying to figure out who I was as a person, and that's kind of where I landed. So my pictures, they're quite large, so I usually digitally manipulate them based off the oral history. So if you see like the fragmentations in them, those are maybe the essence of trauma, the things that I don't know, the information that's missing. And as I'm sure one of you folks know, like once your mom be like, you're not ready to know that yet. That's not something you're ready to know. So those is what you'll see. But I blow them up to use them or honor them in a way and make them as monumental as they could possibly be. As being in this game for 10 years, I've been to all the blue chip galleries and not seen myself in any of them. And I was like, let me bring myself into this space. Let's dominate this space. And it kind of had, I guess, the perspective in which the quote is saying, people see them in different ways. Like a film person will come up to me and see the image in a different way versus someone that does contemporary art, but everyone resonated on a universal level, which is what I like about the work I create now.
Thank you.
I'm Ashley Chappell. A little bit about me. I actually have a background in nursing. My mother was like, don't do anything in the arts, you'll struggle. And here I am. She did not lie. She told the truth. But after graduating from nursing, I found out I had lupus pretty early, and I was forced to retire. And I was retired for a long time, and then went into kidney failure, did chemo, and felt better. And I was like, I want to do something with this second chance of life. Photography was always important to me growing up, same with like looking at family albums and things. But when I was growing up, my father was always like, when I would be bored, he would say, use your imagination, you know, you're never bored, you're never alone. And having such a traumatic early 20s, I kind of wanted to escape reality and play into my imagination. And so what you kind of see from my perspective is how I elevate Blackness and through imagination, color, styling, fashion, very much inspired by theater, costume design, and abstractions. Also really inspired by paintings as well. Like I would go to the African arts fairs and just be inspired by all the colors. But the figures were always abstracted, and so I kind of always was able to feel myself in the work. So I want people to be able to like feel the essence and the mood, opposed to like maybe seeing something direct. So that's my practice.
Well, thank you for these windows into your work. I'm really interested in your process. So I'm wondering, like, where does the process start for you before you're actually taking the photograph? So I'm imagining there's a lot of thought that goes into your content, maybe the type of camera you're using, things like that. I just was interested, where does photography begin for you before the camera itself is involved, the actual act of shooting?
So I do produce the photo shoots. I come from commercial and editorial, and I did study fashion photographers. So I sort of put together a lot of elements, whether in studio or outside. I get a team of people that I collaborate with, but it's definitely a starting point of a subconscious emotion that I'm like meditating on, you know, and I'm kind of leading through my intuition, guiding me into, like, I always have like this vague idea of this image I want to create. And so I just put all these elements together and collaborate with the people that I trust, know me, and make the environment safe for me and for us to create. So, yeah.
Beautiful.
I think I touched on it a bit in terms of, you know, I picked these photos out based off my kind of like estranged connection to them. Before that, even before that happens, I've been very influenced by writing and what that looks like. I wouldn't say I'm a writer, but I think in terms of my process, it starts there at the baseline. And then I'm influenced, and it also kind of deters or kind of is added, like in terms of the title. And how I name it is based off like how I write it in that process. But like I said, I'll scan the photos and I'll blow them up, digitally manipulate them based off like what I know about the person, what I don't know about the person, to bring their essence out. And it is also a very intuitive process. I feel like I'm kind of funneled through in this way. How I created my first piece was, I was sleep deprived, and I had a project that fell through, and I had an image of my mom, and I never thought me and my mom could like looked alike, and I looked exactly like her in this image. And trying to figure out who I was, I played around with it and knowing who she was as a character and how she was, and trying to capture her essence. And this image came out, and I did not know how I created it, being in college and sleep deprived and having a million projects to do. So I had to work backwards, and that is how the writing process became to play.
So, just to interject really quickly, how do you go about picking the pictures that you're interested in? And are they always photos from your family archive, or do you work with general archives?
Yeah, so both now. It was just the archives of my actual family, because we had so many pictures. And I resonated with so many pictures of like my grandmother that like maybe I wasn't in the scene, but this is the thing that I was doing. Like I was out in the club, and I would see a photo of her like out drinking in the club. I was like, "Ooh, where's she at?" I was like, "Oh yeah, there used to be a club down the street. I used to go because my mom and her mom was like sisters." And so like that also resonated in our relationship. But yeah, it's definitely kind of intuitive in that way, and how I pick them. Because you said, how do I pick them?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. It's intuitive, and it's based off like what I don't know about the person. And if I have a whole story, then great. And I've been able to like also capture some audio of my mom telling these stories, so I plan on pushing forward with that too.
So you'd say it's driven by a lot of curiosity, or
yes.
Would you say it's driven by kind of a desire to, I don't know, fill in the gaps of these stories? Or
yeah, I think also just being proud of, I guess it's the richness of my family in a way, and like how do I carry that on legacy wise to like when I have kids? How do I bring that back forth and be like, you didn't know, but this is how it was. We went down, and we did the cookouts, and this is something, especially now since erasure is very large. How do I keep those gems so I can pass them down later?
Beautiful. Well, we'll get more into that later, but I have a lot of questions about archives and preservation. But I wanted to ask Clay, where does photography usually begin for you?
Not in the photography and the editing, I guess. I take a lot of like crap. The majority of the photos I take are pretty bad, so but I have to be able to allow myself to take as many any photo that like I even feel even mildly inclined to take. I have to allow myself to do it because it might suddenly become like significant later. So usually it happens actually in the editing. There's like a quote from there's some interaction between Andre Breton and Claude Lévi-Strauss when they were escaping from Europe during World War II, where they were both on the same boat going to America, where they realized they're on the same boat, and Breton was in like 4th class, and Claude Lévi-Strauss was in like a very nice suite, and they began passing notes to each other. And Claude Lévi-Strauss was just asking him a bunch of questions about surrealism, since Andre Breton's like the father of surrealism, and he's like, what is this stuff really about? And he was asking about how surrealism employed the unconscious, and Breton largely diffused it because he was just like, in the actual production of the artwork, the immediate first stage of the production of an artwork, it's like one has to like let loose the unconscious, but afterwards, because he's a writer, like in the process of editing, it has to be total responsibility. I feel the same way about photography. I need to be able to allow myself to be open to the world in taking pictures, because I have to be able to surprise myself that an image that I would maybe like not normally allow myself to take could like pop out to me, but then afterwards I have to take total responsibility and like actually decide which photos are actually significant, which am I actually going to show. That's like where photography really happens to me.
So I wanted to ask about the element of time. I feel like kind of the go-to phrase that a lot of photographers say when talking about their work is the desire to freeze a moment or to capture a moment. So I wanted to speak to you about how important is the concept of remembrance, conservation, preservation, or the desire to freeze time or capture time. How does that shape your work, if at all?
I think I'm trying to do the opposite and remove time altogether.
Okay.
Because it's all past and present and future happenings like simultaneously. Like, right, I'm presently working on these pieces that are from the past, but it's also going to inform my future in some degree. So I think I'm actually trying to subtract time, or just like remove it, because these are living things. Like I always say, my work is never done, because I might know some new information or find out some new information, and one piece might need to be reworked or added to. So yeah, and the preservation is something that I'm constantly trying to, I guess, find ways. I think the internet, I think a lot of stuff needs to be offline now, even though my stuff is digital. And I predominantly am a painter, so I didn't necessarily wanted to go into the digital realm of things. I fought it for a long time, but this type of work that I'm doing resonates better digitally. So how do you preserve that where everything's online? Everything can be censored. And that's just something I'm constantly questioning. Like, what's the best way to preserve these works? And how do I make sure, they last, beyond me? So yeah, subtracting time, but trying to also find
like a
ways.
collapse of time almost.
Yeah.
Very quantum physics.
Yes.
I think I'm doing the same thing and trying to not capture a reality, a timelessness. Also, when it comes to time, technically I'm dealing with shutter speed and just slowing it down to create abstraction. And so I'm always slowing the talent down as well as my shutter speed to capture an emotion, a feeling. So yeah, that's how I see time, or how I deal with time.
I guess it depends. If I'm feeling like really lazy when I'm taking a lot of like photographs, I'm like seeking out images that maybe I'll like find when I don't have my camera on me, and I'll come back to them later. But then, I don't know, last year I went to, I went to like Mardi Gras in St. Louis, and me and Brandon were both there. We were like extremely drunk, and I was like really I was like in an extreme like flow state. Every photo I was taking was like, I was like surprising myself with after I got it back, because I was like, wow, these are very good. But
I love when it happens.
I know but it's interesting in photography that if you're like really actually seeking out photos, it's like just about the spontaneous concurrence of objects that like fall in front of you, which always is temporal, because sometimes it's just someone like, it might be like someone like falling in frame and you catch them in the middle of the fall or something like that. On the other end though, I guess like, my last book, I guess I had like a kind of like personal relationship with like the subject matter in it, but then the thing that was surprising about it is when you start using photos in a book, you kind of like annihilate the kind of like individual part of them, and you're just using them in a kind of functional way in relationship to all the other images. And so the kind of like personal quality to it, the memory associated with the image kind of got like destroyed in producing the book, which wasn't really a bad thing. I was actually very okay with doing that because I thought the photos were superior to the memory.
Yeah, I really like that answer. That kind of blends into the next question I was going to ask you. And this is a question for all of you and all of your practices, but maybe we'll start with Clay. But what is the relationship to the people or the materials you photograph or work with? How does that influence how much control you exert over an image? Or in other words, how do you navigate your relationship to the subject while balancing your intention on essentially what you want from the photograph? And so yeah, for Clay, I wanted to ask you, your images seem very in the moment, but also deeply considered. Like they're very nicely composed. There's definitely intention behind it. So I'm curious how you think about photography. When you're photographing something, how do you navigate capturing it without interrupting kind of the energy of that moment? Does the presence of a camera ever shift that dynamic for you?
Sometimes it's easier to be places if you have like a camera on you, just because you're like taking photos and it's like, don't worry, I'm supposed to be around here. But a lot of, at least in my older work, I was taking photos of the same people, sometimes still now, but it was really the case in the past. But I wasn't even taking photos the most of people that I was spending the most time in. I just noticed that there was certain people that played best for the camera, which wasn't like they were less aware of the camera's existence or more aware. There's just people who kind of like they feel right on camera. Some of them play a lot towards the camera and some of them will basically totally ignore it. And then there's people that might have either quality that you find like there's nothing about them being like, they might be attractive, they might be like unattractive, they might be like interesting looking, but there's people who have like something that when you photograph them, it like feels right. And it's like kind of singular to that type of like image making. If you had like painted them, there's people who maybe don't look well photographed that would look great if you like painted them, for example. So I found myself like, I had certain friends that I photographed more than others, and they would be like, why are you always taking pictures of me? Or my friends who I didn't take pictures much of, it's like, Clay never takes pictures of me. So I feel like there was just certain people that I was like attracted to photographing, that I just thought whenever I took a photo of them, like more chances than not it was going to be a winner. I don't know.
Do people ever say no or ask you not to?
Yes.
Yeah.
And now I like a lot of my photographs now don't have people in them, and a lot of them are in commercial spaces. They'll be like, get the fuck out, take the film out of your camera, like blah, 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 blah. I'm getting better at just ignoring them. Which like recently I was in like a gas station in St. Louis and someone was like, take the film out of your camera, because I photographed a bunch of dangling lights in the thing because it looked really cool. In
a gas station?
Yeah, and I was like, no. And he was like, I'm going to call the police. And I was like, I don't want to deal with this, so I did. But then the guy was like, you're never allowed here again. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I should have just walked out, because that actually is, in a scenario like that, the best thing you can do is just walk away, because if you took the photos yourself, they are like basically yours and like fair use, especially if it's not of a person. But I really did not want to wait around.
So is apprehension ever something that you deal with? Like, oh, is now a moment that I can pull out my camera?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's sometimes there'll be like a photo where I'll just be like, if I take a photo of this person, I'm gonna get confronted by someone. This is going to be like a disaster, or like I really want to use flash in this photo. I know this is gonna like start something. Like to me, photography is like can be like extremely confrontational. I know people really don't like street photographers, like get up in people's faces, and I don't really do that. But I do think there is like some photography like that. There's like a nasty edge to it that you have to be a little bit like sadistic towards the subject matter, but also masochistic, because people are allowed to turn around and be like, hey, like, why'd you just take a photo of me? I'm gonna like smash your face in, like blah, 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 blah. So there's a kind of like ambivalent relationship to like a subject matter if you're taking a photo of like a stranger or even like your friend, because my mom is always like, do not take photos of me, you take bad photos of me.
Yeah, I mean, I forgot who said it, but some art critic or photographer said that like the moment that you pull a camera out, it turns a situation into a performance. Do you ever feel like when you pull your camera out, your subjects start to perform, and
Yes.
is that positive or negative for you?
It just depends on who it is. Some people like actually are I'm friends with a lot of people who work on film sets, and some people just really don't care, and some people like playing for the camera. It just kind of depends on who I'm dealing with, because some people are just like, they're great when they know the camera's at them. Some people will just do the most horrible like expression.
Me.
Yeah. And it's like, I'm not going to use that. Don't look at me like that. But I don't like telling people to do things when I'm like taking a photo, because it's like this is already a little bit like, if I'm pointing a camera at you, I'm not saying anything in advance. Like, this is already too much. I guess you can pose however you want, but a lot of times I'll just like wait, or I'll like point my camera at someone like I'm going to take a picture if there's someone who likes reacting to the camera, and then I'll like wait like my camera isn't working until they get like kind of bored at me, and then they look away, and then that's when I take a picture.
What about you? I know you kind of spoke about your relationship to the images that you work with. But yeah, what would you say the relationship to the images, how does that impact your work? Like, are there ever subjects that you don't want to touch, for example? I know that's a lot of anxiety that artists who work with archives work with. There's a lot of discussion about, when you use an archival image to create something new, you are reanimating that image, but also you're sort of changing its story.
Yeah.
So do you ever feel maybe a weight or a responsibility about how you change that story?
I mean, yes, definitely. I think what came about how I did the works was because during the time I was in school, trauma in relations to Black folks, Black bodies were huge. And I just did not like kind of like this pushing of that. And everyone reacted, everyone loved that type of work. Like they love, oh my God, so traumatic and true and raw. And it was like, we're more than that though.
Yeah.
We're more than our like traumas, we're more than our like, I don't know. And so I wanted to reverse it in a way that it was kind of a celebratory. Like the works are very colorful, they're sporadic. They kind of have this muralistic kind of expression to it. Back then I was really obsessed with murals. And so that definitely resonates in that work. And so yeah, it's definitely like forbidden, like, yeah, I think I got like my rite of passage when my mom came to like one of my solo shows, and she was like, I get it. And I was like, I don't hear what nobody else say, man. Like it made me like, cause she's like the matriarchy of our family, and she was like, yeah, I can see the stories and how I told them to you in the way you brushstroked, or how you made this mark, or how some of this is kind of like blank. And my mom doesn't know anything about art. She just knows she has a daughter that does it. But literally, like it was, and how I kind of preserve the story or give it, I guess, respect towards the work. It's not blatant to where like the trauma is laid out. It's within the little creases. It's within the white lines. And we can have a deeper conversation about that. But that would be the only way that you really, truly know what's going on. But some people, when they see the work, they relate to it. Because they're like, also, oh yeah, I had a grandmother that I didn't know a lot about until she passed. And now all this stuff came up and she was this whole other person. So yeah, it is it's a kind of picking and choosing. And I do kind of ask permission. You know, my father had passed like 2 to 3, it's been like 3 years now. And I went into his archive and my auntie was like, here, I know you do art, like, sure. Like, you can have the works. And I was like, that's all I need. Like, I just need the permission. But that's why I try to work around the photos of the people that I know are fine with me working with them. But it's never to disrespect. It's also to, you know, to honor them, essentially.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't know if he's here, but do you know Modu Yassin? He's an art. Yeah, so he works with archives a lot as well. And I offered him one of the old picture of my grandma and grandpa for him to work with, and I was so excited to share it with my family, and they were like, "Why did you do that? Why did you?" Essentially, what Modu does is sometimes he'll remove the faces of the characters, so they were not upset, but they're more so confused. Like, what are you trying to memorialize here? If you're not trying to memorialize the character or their character specifically. And I think that with a lot of Black archives, there is this element of, you know, the ability to relate to archives that aren't your own. And I think that people have mixed feelings about that. So,
and I think I didn't really touch on it. You asked before. It's like, did you work with other like people's photographs and yes, like I did a project for Hamlet where I worked on, and it was an odd process because it was definitely like taking the picture, we're gonna organize a shoot, and I was like, this is the first time. I was like, I take whoever the photo is, I take it intuitively. I don't care who took the photo, but something about it resonates with me. Yeah. So it was a different process that I had to get used to, but I read the whole script of like this new iteration of Hamlet and how that actor would actually, I guess, bring Hamlet alive, and it all melted together. And we had never met each other. I had never really heard the script. It's on podcast, by the way, but never heard it, and it just made sense because I was able to really digest who the person was and the character. So yeah, as long as I have the story, because how I see my work, it is visual storytelling. I'm telling a story, and all the lines I put the expressions, mark makings, and the decision of color.
So I'll use this opportunity to kind of turn into a different direction. So Ashley, working with fashion photography, that involves a lot of moving parts. So I'm curious to know how you approach collaboration and control. So how do you feel like you're able to kind of show your character, your vision as a photographer, while also working with, you know, a lot of moving parts, a lot of different people, and a lot of different ideas?
Yeah, so I think it starts with the people that I work with. I meet them. I've built a relationship with my team. So we kind of get each other. So I set out the concept that I want to create, so everyone knows like the general idea, but I'm open to collaboration. So within that box, if someone wants to move around or try something, I'm open to it. Because like what you said, Clay, sometimes you're surprised by image. And then the talent, I allow them within the setting. Obviously, I respect their wishes, but they have freedom to move and to embody the moment that we're making together. So that's when I sort of release control. Is once I put everything together, I kind of that's when I release the control to see if any surprises come. Even though it's a very controlled environment, there are surprises, there's things that I think of last minute, because I try to I do all of the things, even the abstract photos, in camera. Mm-hmm. So whether I'm shooting through something, spontaneously grabbing something to put a barrier between the subject and the camera, that's when I let control go.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it might be beneficial to kind of really hear in depth what your processes are like start to finish. So I know we kind of talked about, how does the idea form before that photograph is taken, and we've touched a little bit on that process in the middle, but just for the sake of kind of peering into your process in depth, what does that look like start to finish?
Like I said, I'll start with like a subconscious visual. Like I'm usually inspired by a painting. So maybe some colored, blurred imagery or feeling or mood. I'm also inspired by music. So before I go into a shoot, sometimes I'll listen to very melancholy music. So sometimes the feeling may be sad or happy. But I kind of start there, getting my mind right with music. I've built out the team. We go in, we create. As I'm shooting is when I kind of just let go. I'm not thinking. But while I'm shooting, and I shoot tethered to a laptop, I'm looking through the imagery, and I kind of know when I have the shot. And I do light editing, and I just always know when I've got that vision I was looking for. I'm like, oh, this is it. Like that photo, I knew, like, okay, I got it, I can move on. And I just saved that, took that photo away. And I've been building a collection of those moments from different shoots of this feeling in this imaginative world that I have. And so, that's my process.
Beautiful.
Something good. And I can relate to that. I think since my work is so intuitive, like I've touched on the fact that I'll write, and then I'll also pick the photo and then scan it. And then there's a moment where I'm like, it's done.
Yeah.
Because it's digital, so I'm also not technically physically taking the image. So it is kind of different process for me, where I'm like, something about this photo, something here. And I don't know if that's, because I think you speak on like the spontaneity, like stuff happening in the midst of it, and I love those little, and I've also I was like, those are the magic, like that's in the parts where I'm like, this is done. I don't need to touch this no more. I don't need to overdo it, because I've had that where I'm just working on a piece. It was kind of going okay. My whole computer crashed, and like I had to start over, and I was like, oh, it was a reason why, because it wasn't gonna get there unless it did. I had to start from scratch. So it is an intuitive kind of when I'm finished, and then like the title is based off like where I'm at and what writings I was doing during the time, but also like having to experience those moments in the kitchen, those parties where we're like all talking loudly and talking about a story or reminiscing. That's also a part of the process that I didn't realize. And I was like, it makes it even more richer for me, because I'm like, I can tether this story directly to a moment, directly to a time where we were, playing Uno and laughing and cussing each other out, but also talking about aunties like past lovers. And I was like, oh, this is juicy. Like, I love this. And then bringing that into the image is something that I think I love the process of it. It's pretty beautiful.
So really quick, so kind of working digitally, if you ever do feel like you've overdone it, do you just kind of let it be and
no, I just be like, delete. This don't feel right. Delete. And I'll just like, Control Z it all the way back, like until I'm like, okay, something's here. So it is kind of like this plane of like imaginative that I'm like, I have kind of a general image of how I want this to be presented, but then also I'm letting it be controlled by like having this process, erasing, subtracting, adding color, complementary, and what does that bring? And then also the story behind it.
Thank you. What about you? What would your process be start to finish?
Sure, I just am looking for, I want to set myself up in situations that I think good photographs could happen, and most of the time they don't happen. So I want to bring my camera with me places that I think that I might come across something that could be a good photograph. And usually I'll feel more motivated to do that when I've gone somewhere recently without my camera and I came across something that could have been a good photograph and I didn't have it on me, and then I'm like mad for the rest of the day. And so then I'll end up taking like either some photographs or a lot of photographs, and then the majority of them aren't very good, and I'll have to sit with the ones that I've taken for like kind of a long time before I decide like this is decent, this isn't. Unless there's one that just, sometimes a photo will like really leap out to you, like this is actually something, you can kind of like feel it like very immediately, but sometimes you have to sit with something for a while to decide whether it's anything or not. But usually I feel like it's more just about putting yourself in situations where an interesting photo could happen for you. But otherwise it'll just be like a bunch of just random stuff. I don't know, yeah.
So we'll start to kind of wrap this up so we can give our audience a chance to ask any questions they might have. But I wanted to ask you, what is something about working with photography that is interesting or even difficult right now? Is there something about photography that's a bit resistant, frustrating, or slow? I know that before I went the art historian route, I did a lot of painting, a lot of figurative painting, which for me was a field that felt a bit restrictive in a way, by expectations from the market. There's a lot of Huack figurative painters right now, and part of me was like, well, I'm not doing that. But yeah, I just wonder, like, is there anything about working with the medium of photography that gives you that same feeling or apprehension? And if so, how do you work through that?
I could start on that, maybe.
Yeah, please.
I don't know, living in Chicago, every time I'm like walking around, I feel Chicago's like a city that looks like the 19th and 20th centuries. And so a lot of times I'm like frustrated with, it feels like it's like stuck in stasis sometimes. And I'm like visually uninterested in it. Sometimes to kind of spark my photography, I have to get out, which also I work a lot in major cities, and those aren't particularly interesting either. Like New York is not a very interesting looking city to photograph in my opinion, and Los Angeles maybe more so, but it's also like barely a city. I have to like, I sometimes as like a photographer, I like crave like a horrible disaster. I feel like other photographers like feel the same way too. Like when those fires were happening in LA, every photographer I know those in LA were like wandering around so they could take photos of like horrible disasters. So I feel like there's like something you want to like, sometimes I'm like in Chicago and I'm like, oh, this stupid city. I wish just like something horrible would happen. And just,
It may.
just because I could have something to like take a photo of. But then otherwise I'm just like, no, I like it when things are normal here and I'm not a photographer. But I don't know, when I'm just like working and taking photos, I'm just like, it's sort of like I wish something like extremely like terrible could happen so I could have like something to take a picture of.
Sorry.
That's what like
I can go. I could light me up. One thing I found frustrating for me is like what Black artists the stories we're allowed to tell.
Definitely.
What is highlighted? Because I'm not speaking to trauma, pain. I'm not highlighting the reality. So there's no voyeurism in my work. It's play. It's imaginative. Use of color, which is also a cultural thing. Just pushing the work to be seen and understood in places where it's just not been. That's kind of trying to explain the work where some people get it and then others it's just I think a disconnect, and just having the permission to highlight beauty, just to highlight us and not traumatic situations. And just adding, because we do need that type of work, but we also need to escape that, you know, and so that I feel like that's where I come in, and that's where I want to live. And so just having that permission, especially as you know, our history is being erased and just all the art, you know, so it's already difficult to get this type of work seen, but now that they're erasing history, this is like, you know, the idea of this work being shown, I'm fearful that we won't be allowed to tell these stories if we're losing the past and the history. So
I'm not scared to tell the story. I'm usually the person in my family that's going to say it regardless, or say the stuff that I'm not supposed to say. I am that person. I was like, what you mean? You remember back when you did? So I'm not scared to say that. And I think that's what's pushed my work forward, because I've made sure it's been, because there is a lot of Black, you know, painters, and kind of like representation is the deal. And I wanted to represent, but also show a different type of perspective from the representational aspect of things, and push that. I think my only kind of fear is that it's digital. Like AI being a thing, like I didn't do my work when AI was a thing. So people was like, is this AI work? I was like, no, like calm down. Like I know it's digital, but it's not. Like this is from like hours of me like working on this piece, either digitally or not. So I guess like that is kind of the weird space that I'm in, that my work is digital, but it is kind of these physical, large archival pieces, and making sure it still has that presence versus just being like some online picture you scroll through. Like what gives it still its kind of juice. And I think I've done a good job of like really bringing out the person in the photos, and really bringing the background to their story and giving it the honoring it needs, to where it has still some significance in the slew of things going on digitally. But also trying to promote myself, yet also trying not to get sucked into the social media realm is really hard. And that's just, I think, a constant struggle for artists. Trying to do the work, but also be shown in all the many aspects of this art life that they didn't say in college. I don't know, I didn't get taught that, how to manage that.
Do you ever fear that the work that you, and I guess this could be a question for all of you, I feel like right now, obviously, AI is really obvious, and we won't go down a whole AI rabbit hole, but I don't know, have you had any anxiety about publishing work digitally and like having that exist on and in the internet realm, which makes it vulnerable to, I don't know, like free range on there?
Yeah.
Or is that kind of something you're not thinking about? Does that inspire you to kind of, I don't know, limit your online sharing of work at all?
I think so. It's like a mixture.
Yeah, I was privy to this, to a conference and saw what AI was capable of a couple years ago. And that was like maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I met up at the conference and I saw what they were capable of. But fear doesn't stop me, so I keep putting it out there. But I do think about recreating, and it's getting skilled. But I just pray that, AI can't replace real human experience. And I have faith in humans and people that we will, look for human-made art.
Definitely. Because the same thing can be said about anything, like research, writing, all of that is vulnerable to how anyone takes it and recreates it, whether that's a human or a robot.
I think you just have to tap into the discernment at this point, like heavily. Like whatever. I think once an artist, always an artist. And like as we talked on, like feeling what something is done, having that feeling of imagination, Like, you know when someone created that versus like
Yeah.
AI generated. But I fear that the new generation of folks, because I'm a millennial, very proud, and us understanding kind of the without the internet versus with the internet, we have that mixture. The kids nowadays don't, and it's so immersed, and it's like, and it's gonna do a lot of desensitizing to what we kind of are trying to, I guess, keep the magic in the work. Yeah.
Maybe I'm not so concerned with like AI from the perspective of photographer, but I'm also like, I'm not someone who makes a lot of money as a photographer, and I think a lot of where AI is going to be used will just end up being filling in spaces where photography was used instrumentally anyway. And so AI can't really think, meaning it can think instrumentally, but it can't really produce a new thought. It can't say something that's never been said before, which is like the radical part of thinking, that you might say something that no one's ever said before, or think something that no one's ever thought before. People can change historically. That's not really what AI is meant to do, though. It's meant to fill in the fact that a lot of thinking and a lot of like the production of like images become instrumental. It gets used for advertisement. So AI is produced because it's an expression of like a real need. I was never really getting money for that need, however, so it's not blowing my world apart too much. But I guess I am also with I'm with Andrea to a certain extent. I like worry about I guess I worry about young people. I teach at like community college now. And I've taught young people before that, so I guess I'm always a little bit concerned. But I do use social media. I like published some video of like a slideshow of some of my photos on like TikTok, and some of the kids like replying, it like went viral, and then the top comment was like 3,000 likes of someone being like, "Man, life sucks." And I was like, what are you talking about? And it's like, is this what people get from my like photos? That, like, life sucks? And it's like,
for that next event.
it's like, life does not suck. Life is like awesome. There'd be no point in like photographing the world if you weren't like aesthetically interested in it. But I don't know, I guess I'm like a little bit concerned of like that impulse, but I guess that's just like concern over like I've like always wanted my work to be liked by like teenagers, but are they gonna like it out of like sort of like depression and nihilism and like apathy? And it's like, I don't really want that. I want people to be like interested in the world. I want them to be like aesthetically invested in it. But I don't know, maybe I am just like fueling people's like nihilism. That's not good.
Well, it was really great talking to you all. I'm gonna end this with one last question. Are there any projects that you're working on right now that you'd like us to look out for? Or that you'd wanna give us a peek into?
I'll go. I'll let you know. I don't think I'm ready to release that project yet.
No?
Yeah, no pressure.
Yeah, I'm not ready to speak about my next project, but I am working on something non-fashion related. It's kind of the inspiration for why I've escaped to passion. So it's definitely a personal topic, and so yeah, that's something I will be bringing out soon.
Amazing.
I took like a 2-year sabbatical from like making art to heal, and I guess my healing formed into dancing, very much so. So if you saw me outside, that's why. I'm very much inside now, but like I literally took 2 years, and I had like a whole bunch of friends that were DJs, and so I went to like these very, I don't know, something in the air that was very healing, in the gathering of going into house music, like dance parties, and dance has always been also kind of sort of part of my processes and like emotionally. So I kind of want to bring that to the forefront art-wise and start with textiles and fabrics. So be on the lookout, because I'm out. I've been in the studio clearly.
I'm excited. What about you?
Photography, I'm just going to be doing the same thing I've been doing. I'm working on a couple of like film projects right now, but it's all pretty early stage, so it's going to be a fairly relaxed year for me, I think.
I mean, given the state of politics, you might have a big event too.
We have to keep from crying.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much. I'm excited to see you guys continue to make work and learn about it and maybe write about it. But I'd love to open the floor to anyone who has questions for these artists. What's your name?
Ayomi, nice to meet you all. It's lovely to hear about your work and your processes. My question was originally for Andrea, but then as I started thinking more about it, I realized that it applies to all of you and that every one of us in this room. Does the idea of the fact that you are constantly acting as a historian and archivist like ever impacting your thought process? Like you are very familial, ancestral. You feel very fantastical in the now, like bringing the fantasy into the real world, and then Clay feels very life at large. So like, do those thoughts ever, I guess, like impact how you feel about the work that you do, and like how you feel as an artist? Like, does that ever come across your mind?
Can you say the question again?
Like,
the concept?
it's essentially just the idea that. So the thought came because Andrea talked a lot about her family, ancestral, and I realized that you reminded me of one of my aunts and the fact that like she's like our family historian.
Yep.
And I feel like you are your family's historian and archivist. And I realized that the three of you are still doing that in different ways of like you being like fantastical in the real world and you being familiar. Like does the idea of like being a historian and archivist ever impact how you're feeling about your work and the work that you're doing?
Definitely. As I think of I think constantly legacy is always on my mind. Like, I wouldn't know what kind of person I am today if I didn't hear those stories, if I wasn't there and I didn't have anything. And especially since like everyone is getting older now, like, you know, both my grandparents have passed on my mom's side. Like that legacy is gone, but my mom is still kind of like the person that has it. And I'm like, okay, tell me. Like no one else in my family is kind of really interested in being like, oh, let me pass this info down. And I peeped that and I was like, no one's ever talked to my grandfather and like really sat down with him. I kind of came to that realization so late. So yeah, it's always in the back of my mind. I think that's why I've kind of like tried to capture these like not video, but like voice memos of like my mom and I just like over watching a movie talking, you know, whether it's talking shit or we're talking about something that happened or back in the day, because my mom she reminisces a lot. And I'd be like, I need to record this. Like, I need to know, because it's stuff I don't even know about my dad that she knows. And I was like, I never knew that. She was like, yeah, like, this is it. I was like, let me put this on real quick and let me preserve this. I want to, you know, find better ways to preserve, I think. So it is always in the back of my mind, because I'm like, it's the richness that's dying off because no one's interested. Yeah.
I guess for me, I think about it when I'm looking at all of the work, because my imagination changes. So different photos look different. And so when I look at it collectively, I'm like, oh, this is a different version of me. This was more abstract. And so I do think about like how they can live together at large. That's the only time I really think about that.
I guess if you're like invested in the present, like a certain degree, it's going to end up being a kind of historical archive. I've had like people who are younger than me say like, oh, people are going to be like, might look at your photos in like 15 years and be like nostalgic about like the 2010s or 20s, and I was like, oh. I hope that the historical aspect is only incidental, and so like the formal parts of like the photo kind of like dominate that, and that the history aspects are only the same way that you could view like a Walker Evans photo historically. Like you can see the 1930s, but you're gonna see it in like a really weird way. You're not getting like a New York Times photo of the 1930s. You're getting like a Walker Evans photo that you're like kind of, the 1930s is like poisoned it to like a certain degree. Or like it's shaped by its own moment, but the moment like slips through because he was determined to find a way to show his own time.
Thank you.
Great question.
This is very specific to Ashley. In the advertisement here,
Okay.
just the costume choice is so interesting. I just wonder how kind of the articles of clothing, are they from thrift stores, or how do you decide?
They're from designers, student designers. Usually I kind of pay attention to the fashion designers. I'm really into like couture pieces, so I'm not really interested in like clothes that feel like someone in this room would have them on, you know. No one would dress like that, you know. So, yeah, and I've never loved like photographing people with blue jeans or just like a suit, unless it's like a commercial suit. So, I think it goes back to my childhood, like seeing costume designs, because they really told the story, you know. So, yeah, I pay attention to student designers. So I'm always looking at the ones in Chicago and New York. Some thrift stores as well, yes.
Off of that, so in like those photographs, you're curating the shot, like by you're finding the designer, you're finding the
So I collaborate with the stylist.
Okay.
We send each other things that we like. So I follow the designers' lookbooks on Instagram. I'll send it to the stylist to pull it. We'll come together. The stylist will style it. I'll kind of say, you know, yes or no on this. Sometimes they'll be like, well, I think we should. I'm like, okay, let's try it and see if we like it, if it's telling the story. But it's my one filter it has to go through is it definitely can't feel like someone would wear this in real life. Look for a couture structure. I like shapes. I like colors, textures. So those are the garments I'm interested in.
I think we have time for one more.
Oh. Hey, you can go.
Thank you.
It's okay.
We can talk about something.
All right.
Let's hope literally past what scenes. Yeah, we have some time.
Okay, so I can do mine?
Yeah, you got it.
All right, cool. Mine was simple, so I was gonna let it pass. But I'm curious to know, I know you all shared about how you view the work or why you make the work you make, and I love all that you all share very about the work. But I'm curious to know, like, what do you want the viewer to feel when they're looking at the work that you create? Do you leave it open for interpretation, or do you want them just to take what you see with the work, or whatever?
I want people to be able to dream, for sure. I'm really big into imagination, see possibilities, see beauty. I also think it's important to see Black bodies and beautiful garments. I always think about like how we were brought to this continent with no clothes and the loss of identity with that, and us not knowing, you know, where we come from because we were stripped of our clothes, and I think that was intentional. And even now, like, there's a war on clothes, like clothes that are not polyester, you know. And so I just want people to, especially Black people, to see themselves beautiful, see color, be inspired, be excited, just something different than what's been out there. So.
I think mine is, I always think of, or how I'm thinking going forward is how to present. So I always want the people to experience the work. I always kind of give people free range to be like, you going into their space now, so I don't really know. You know, you interpret it how you you do that because my pieces are very large. So every time you look at the pieces, you see something new, whether you're a filmmaker or writer or whatever, and to connect. I think what's been happening, or what I've seen over the 10 years of people, even that is not my color, being like, I don't know why I'm connected to this person, but I'm connected to this person in a very weird way, and I have no words for it. And I was like, well, I did my job. You felt something, and you might, I've had people say, I don't get it. I was like, you ain't sitting with it, and they don't get you either, girl. But but yeah, sit with the work, connect, and experience it. Really slow down to experience it. I think I got the abstraction and the mark making is so small, and it has this way of being 3-dimensional in a 2-dimensional format that I really like about the work. So yeah.
I guess like maybe the origin of a lot of my work came from like a certain like nauseous experience of like how the world looks, of like, oh God, I hate walking into Target and it just like looks like that, and just like everyone here is like an idiot, and then Jewel especially.
Oh, Jewel.
But then I don't know, after I started taking pictures of it, it sort of like reversed and became about like, oh, actually the same means by which you have a sort of like disgust towards the world is also the means that you can also be attracted to it to a certain degree. I always remember this conversation I overheard of these like 2 drunk like frat boys on like a train in Chicago, and this guy was like screaming at his friend. He's like, the craziest thing about love is that you choose to do it. He's like screaming it, and I was just like, and I was like also like drunk on the train. I was like sitting back, and I was like, that's not even true. And then after a while I was like sitting with that, I was like, actually, no, that is more interesting, because it is like, it's more interesting to treat something as like a choice than an accident, especially with something that has like such like kind of like aesthetic charge. It's interesting to treat Target as something that's not just like, oh, the ugly world that we've accidentally made. It's like, what if actually we're like aesthetically interested in how this looks, and we like how this looks, and then the first level of people walking into it is just like, oh, like stupid Target, it's like ugly. And then it's like, no, the majority of people that come in here, the people who designed it because it has some type of like aesthetic interest to them. And what if the entire world is actually like that, but the whole world has this sort of like push-pull of how we experience it? Like, it's like, oh, this is disgusting. It's like, I like it. But it's like, not like, these aren't like 2 different types of people, but this is like yeah. So I don't know. I hope that people kind of get that when they like look at something that maybe they either don't like or they like, and they're like, hi, I like this even though this is like really ugly, or it's like, this is something that I'm interested in, and I think this is a really ugly photograph or something. I hope that is like the feeling.
No, I love that. It reminds me a lot of how people feel about brutalism on university campuses. Like, go watch The Brutalist and then say that to my face.
I'm not gonna do it as a question, wrapping up, maybe I can do it as a comment, does that sound good? I'll try to touch on it, but I'm Triple M, and I came to support Ashley, but I'm happy to have learned about, in depth, a little bit more about the other people's work. So what I wanted to say about Ashley's work that was resonating with your talk was how, like, I grew up in a high school where it was considered, like, I'm going to put quotes around it because I fucking hate this term, but it's like diverse. There was like a diverse, but what we were taught was not. So like the type of, like what's actually taught or spoken or thought of as like scholarship was very specific and involved a lot of whitewashing, even though it wasn't spoken about directly. And so I think about that from like, I just wanted to say that from my perspective, and like Malcolm X was like, considered very violent. Like we didn't study Malcolm X because he was considered violent in school. And something that when I finally gave myself permission to read Malcolm X, because I think I was waiting for a black person to tell me it was okay, which is really strange. So I just want to talk about that process because I think it's important when we're kind of like peeling back the curtain of how like racism is like insidious. And I think it's beautiful because there was something that's struck with me once I did finally read him, that there was this idea of Black excellence. And I really think that's really exquisite what you're doing, and I thought I'd say that because I think there is a gatekeeping on what luxury, royalty, what like even beauty, intellectualism. And so I think that's really beautiful that you're doing that with your work, and it's just like, I just wanted to add that to the mix because I think there's something there. And then I think there's something interesting really going on, Andrea, with you in vernacular and like how you include like the whisper, the laughter, and the scar within the way that you're like enlivening how we understand a vernacular or an archive. And with Clay, I just felt like it was more like related more to like Errol Morris's and even unfortunately Larry Clark. But you know, I think there's something about how we look away from how do I say it? The scars. So I think there is something interesting between all of your works in terms of vernacular. So that's kind of, I don't need to ask, like we can continue talking like more on your time. It was a meaningful talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we do have some time. Go ahead.
I want to thank y'all for being here. Y'all are all amazing. I'm Jeremiah. Just a quick question. What does texture play a role in your work? Like, does texture play a significant role in the way that you view what you create? Or does it more so show up during the process or after?
I think for me, it shows up in various ways. I think they touched on it in terms of like the vernacular. So how I title things. I always think of the moment in which I'm in that relates to this image, and how I mark make, and I think redact as well as overlay. So the texture is always there because I'm just trying to pull the story and from different angles. I think that's how I see when I'm doing the work. I'm like, what about like, let me dig deeper, let me dig, like, and whatever that looks like. And textures is a big part of that. Creating those textures, creating those lines. I don't know, I always see it as like a poem in a way. Like it's not, some of my favorite poems never just wrote lines. They wrote, you know, the pause, Langston Hughes, all of those very like different ways they wrote. I find I'm like in there visually trying to do the same thing, because it is, everyone's story is so poetic to me. But yeah, that's the best way I could describe it.
I'm still meditating on that.
I guess I'm like looking for stuff that like feels like you could not see, like textures. Definitely something I think about, but then it's hard to articulate. I guess I'm like looking for like surfaces and stuff sometimes that look like I wouldn't find it any other time. Like there's this thing that I keep crossing when I'm on my way to work. It's like some mobile gas station that has this like the weirdest like the store in the center of it or whatever, and it has like one of those slate rock exteriors, like tan slate rock that you'd maybe see in like Arizona, but it's in Chicago. And then right above it is like the extremely like smooth, like mobile, like when you build a gas station, when you buy a permit to be like a manager for a gas station, they send you all the parts to like build the thing. You have to like pay them up front, and then they'll send you the artifice of the building for you to like construct wherever you are. And so it has like that plastic thing on top of this like extremely weird like slate rock artifice of the building they build in the center. I've never really seen any gas station that's like that before, but it just catches my eye every time I see it. It's like stuff like that I'm very like visually attracted to. So yeah.
I guess for me, texture adds richness to the photo. Layers. I'm drawn to texture. I have to meditate on that though, like why that is important to me, but it definitely is.
I mean, you were talking about material with clothing.
Yeah, I think it's, when I grew up, I went to the school in Roseland and we learned about Kenya and the patterns, the fabric. I'm really drawn to cultural garments that have like feathers or silks, and just the richness it adds, and the quality that I see in it, and the story in that, and how those garments are made. Even in my photos, there's texture too with the shutter drag, the abstraction. I'm also been shooting through things.
What does that mean?
I don't know. I think that's probably, even though there's a lot of joy and imagination, and it's the overall thing is fantasy. I think my sadness seeps through, and I think in a way I hide the subjects, and so I think depending on the dips of my mood, sometimes I retreat back. The subject is back and hidden. Sometimes they're up front, bold. And so I definitely use texture, but I'm learning more about myself and the decisions I make. But it is a big part, so I really appreciate that question.
A follow-up question to what you just said. When you were talking about like sometimes finding your subject, is that like pure aesthetic, or like maybe like a view of like protection?
Yeah, someone told me that, and I resonated with that. It wasn't a thought of mine, but I do resonate with the protection of the subject. Also, I kind of saw that element in paintings, and I feel that in that way we can all connect and see ourselves. And so if I have this person and you connect to the figure, the subject, the Black figure, we can all connect to that as one. So it's both. Yeah.
Like abstracting the form, so it's almost like a mirror for whoever was looking at it.
Like I see myself in that, despite the facial features or the identity, but I can connect to that subject. Yeah.
Ken?
I'll do another question.
Oh, God.
I want to do it, but she did. No, but I was thinking about also photography and like the ebbs and flows of like being creative, and like Andrea talked about taking like a sabbatical and then Clay going in between like filmmaking and photography. And so for me, I would be really just curious to know like what would you all say like do all like those ebbs and flows? Like what's like a really high moment for you as a photographer, or like an accomplishment or a goal that you reached that you're very proud of?
I guess whenever I take a photo, I'm just like, sometimes if it's just, if I'm on a slump of like, if I'm on like a 5-month slump of no photos that I'm happy with, and just one good photo will be enough to just be like, oh yeah, let's keep doing this.
I think the moments when I've had, like, I think I've gotten, so it was like a 2-year sabbatical, but of course, like I would hop into certain, and I mentioned the Hamlet project where I was like, I had a lot of autonomy to like do something different. And I was like, yeah, I don't really I'm kind of getting tired of the white wall, gotta put my work up, drop it off. Like it's kind of getting redundant. So I wanted to do something different, and it was in theater. And as I'm going slowly into dance, like it was like perfect timing. And it was a collaboration that was kind of seamless in the very weird way. And I was like, oh, I gotta do this. I gotta keep going. I was like, projects is where I'm at now that I want to be, because I've shown in many places, and I'm like, I'm bored. I've been bored. How do I spice this up? And I think it's just reigniting my imagination a bit, and my curiosity is where I'm at. I was like, okay, dance keeps coming up for me, whether that's personally or in the arts or whatever. Let me dive into it. This is a whole other tunnel I haven't like been in. Let's see where I come out of. Like, and I think that's what's keeping me going, because motivation is very hard right now.
What's the question again? Oh, something we're proud of. I mean, I'm proud of all of it, coming from my background, having lupus, even sitting here today, being healthy, doing this. I'm really grateful, but breaking down like a lot of barriers. I go back and forth between being proud or wanting to say that I'm a fashion photographer, but if I'm being honest, like this is a hard space to occupy. It's not diverse, and like it was said earlier, the world doesn't want to see Black luxury or Black imagination. So all the moments where the work is put on the wall, in a magazine, being seen, or I see other people excited about the work, like when I peep around a corner and someone's taking a photo of it, those moments, just having the work appreciated and seen and valued means a lot to me.
Good question. This might sound strange. Would you guys ever, this is not a show proposal, it just was an idea that came in my head. Would you guys ever create work that could not be seen online and only in person?
Yes. Work that's only.
Would they ever create work that could only be seen in person and would never ever be put online?
Yeah.
Or like, does the thought of like not enough people seeing it like have like a weird feeling in your chest?
I think so I'm back and forth. So yeah, absolutely. I want to get, I think the goal now, or what I think is going to happen as we progress, is that more and more people are going to want to be offline. But I know for a fact, I wish I had someone like me to look up to when I was doing art. Like, I didn't know, people was like, who's your influences? I don't know. And then like someone introduced me to a Black artist and I was like, oh, okay. And like the representation I did need, even though I try to be all hard about it and be like, I didn't need nothing, I can still, be influenced. But I needed to see someone like me. And I don't know how people, or how the new generation is going to access it if it's offline, because that's where they're at. That's their baseline, is online. Unless I guess just, me and the millennials is going to rock it out until we figure out a way to kind of pass the baton a bit. So yeah, that's the balance, or the struggle I think about.
Yeah, I guess I've already made work that isn't online, so yes.
Yeah, probably the new work is deeply personal. It's with loss. I just realized I'm, very protective of it, and part of it, I don't want to speak about it yet. So I probably will save it for like a show and not put it online. I do see the value of bringing people out, and if they see things online, sometimes they don't have a reason to. So yeah, I'm valuing not putting everything online.
Well, someone needs to make a show.
Yeah.
I'll do it.
No, thank you.
Because I think the curiosity would really drive people to be in these public spaces with your work. And then separately, I just wanted to say a comment about your work about luxury. Like, as someone who works in fashion, I think that your work in the fashion world is really pivotal, and I hope that you keep doing it, and like that. I think it is making an impact. Like when I saw one of your photographs, I was just, that is stunning. I just felt it like in my stomach and like my chest, and it's just, I think that's why it feels. But that's why I use the word fantastical, not because it doesn't exist, but because you're making it exist in the world.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful to see.
Thank you.
Congratulations for all of you. Like, all of your works are lovely.
Thank you.
Well, maybe we'll wrap up now. But yeah, we'll be around to chat and chit chat, and there's wine and coffee and
We'll try to hang out for a little